Krishna. Okay, I think that's okay. Om
Hare Devi Ki. Hare Krishna. Thank you very much, everyone, for braving the wild weather to make it for Bhagavat Sravana. Haribo! Haribo! Hare Krishna. Okay, so we're very grateful for everyone to be here, and especially grateful to have Hare Devi leading Kirtan. Felt like we were transported back to last night, but the Kirtan's going on for the Pushpa Abhishek, which is really ecstatic. Felt like there was 100 people in the room, 200 people in fact. Thank you for coming. And we have a very special guest this week, who is well known by many devotees, probably most devotees here also. And he contacted Krishna consciousness while traveling in India. He was 18 years old, and he's only 19 now. He looks like he's only 16. No. So he's since contacting Krishna consciousness, he's growing younger, getting older. And since then, he's been trying to put into practice what he has learned. He's a disciple of Vaisheshika Prabhu, and very dedicated, an amazing book distributor. And when we first came, we were going out on Sundays and distributing books together, and that was one of the more blissful times I can say that I've had. I don't know if we would have gone out today, but it's always fun going out on books with him. He's naturally attractive personality, really personal, and knows how to make contact with people, reach them where they're at, and always inspires them to take a book, or at least in the mood of Vaisheshika Prabhu, they always definitely leave with a good impression. So it's very wonderful. And we're continuing our series this week, leading up to Gaur Purnima, which is 2 weeks away, 10 days away, something like that. So on Tuesday, the 3rd of March, so we have one more session next week on Lord Chaitanya, and this week we'll be touching on Lord Chaitanya's instructions to the Korma Brahmana, and also, is it Vasudev Das? Vasudev Brahmana. So like that, so we're very fortunate to have with us His Grace Anupama Prabhu. Haribo! And we're online also on Anupama Prabhu. We have about 9,000 people who are watching. And also, just a reminder, if anyone is interested in having a set of Sri Chaitanya Charitamritas, then we still have a few of them left. They're going like hotcakes every week. People are taking, so if you want a set, you better get it now, because otherwise we're going to have to order them and it'll take weeks to get it. So look at that. It's urgent and important. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai.
Give me a moment here while I pull up this whole little verses.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna.
John, thank you. Sorry for the wait. So it's good to see everybody, and it's my honor to be here. This is where I got my start in spiritual life practically, so I did initially come in contact with devotees in kind of official manner in India, I think over on Eco Village, actually. I was sent there by Damodar Swami, some of you may know, kind of a prominent figure in the New York scene as well. And I got convinced by those devotees there at the Eco Village. And the reason why they convinced me wasn't because of philosophy, though the philosophy was beyond reproach. But what ultimately convinced me was the mood that they had, the affection. I could see that they were genuine spiritual practitioners who were actually experiencing what they were talking about. It wasn't just some kind of theoretical dogma that to convince me of, but they were tasting something themselves and were hoping that I could also have the same experience, which was so beautiful and beyond this world. So that mood and that desire to actually taste something legitimately, I could see was reflected here at the Bhakti Center. I think a lot of it is stemming from His Holiness Radhanath Swami, who is a touchstone of bhakti, and everywhere he goes seems to inspire devotees to inspire others. So that's what this place was for me. And I'm very glad to be here on this day. Hopefully I can say something that he would appreciate. So, Om Agana Terminandasya Gananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. So, I came to talk about my favorite person today. His name's Lord Chaitanya. For those unaware, he's pretty cool. Some would say he's the coolest. And the reason why he's so cool is because he came to give something that no other incarnation or other personality, for that matter, had ever given before. This Braj Prema, this ecstatic love for Krishna. Previously, there was an option to go back to Godhead in a sense, but it was in more of a reverential, kind of official mood, and not so much, wouldn't so much characterize it as love, or what to speak of, an ecstatic love, an overwhelming love that we're blessed to know about these days. But Lord Chaitanya, who is in this mood of an avadut, simply giving, he's broken open this storehouse that was locked up tight for billions and billions of years prior, and gave this highest possible love for Krishna. So, upon considering that, I started to think, well, if that was his purpose, to give this highest, most incredible, ecstatic love for Krishna, then his instructions that he gave while he was here must therefore be pretty important. And an even more interesting fact about that is that, in fact, he didn't really instruct so many people. It's not that he was going from town to town and standing on a soapbox and telling everybody, you know, you should chant and you should give up your sinful activities and so on and so forth. He was going around and he was performing ecstatic kirtans. And by that performance, then people were becoming inspired to become Krishna conscious, and ultimately started on their path back home, back to Godhead. But there were a few occasions in which he did actually instruct people in a very direct way. Now, amongst those instances, though, most of them were given to his eternal associates, people like Sarup Damodar Goswami, Ramananda Roy, Rupa Goswami, Sanatan Goswami, people who were all identified as being part of as having descended from Goloka Vrindavan, actually. So, upon scouring the entire Chaitanya Charitamrita, I could actually only find only one or two instances in which Lord Chaitanya gave a direct order to somebody who wasn't already an eternally liberated personality. So now we've condensed it down to a very, I would say, dense and unique demographic here, where we're basically talking about us, about sadhakas, people who aren't eternally liberated, but want to be eternally liberated, want to develop this Braj Prem, this ecstatic love that Lord Chaitanya came to give. And so I'd like to talk a little bit about those instructions today. And
dive into some of those pastimes. So interestingly enough as well, those two instructions that he gave are within about 15 verses of each other. These two instructions, pretty much the only instructions you'll see, the only orders he gave to those people who are not already completely liberated souls. So, should we cut it off there? No? Leave you on the cliffhanger? Or should we keep going? Okay, we'll keep going. So, these come from the Madhya Lila, 7.128. And I'll just read through a couple of these verses, which are incredible and life-changing. And then we can discuss. And I think especially since it's a smaller class size, we could make it a bit more of a discourse, back and forth. If anybody wants to share anything or add, that'd be very much welcome. Madhya Lila 7.126, where it starts. So it starts off with a Kurma Brahmana, who was a householder, like all of us are, not a mendicant like Raghunath Das Goswami, who Lord Chaitanya told to eat sparingly and do some other kind of intense austerities. This is a householder, someone just like you and me. Obviously, he's a little bit different. He's in Lord Chaitanya's pastimes. But for practical purposes, he was there with his family. He was absorbed in providing for them and lived among society. And he met Lord Chaitanya and became enamored by him, fell completely head over heels in love with him. How could you not? It's Radharani and Krishna themselves. And he became so infatuated by him that he said, "Can I please go with you? Would you mind if I gave up my family and traveled with you from here on out?" And Lord Chaitanya said, "No." This is an interesting instruction in of itself. It reminded me a bit of Krishna and Arjuna in the Bhagavad Gita. Arjuna suggested something that I think many, perhaps immature spiritualists, obviously he was acting in a lila, but I think a more immature opinion in terms of what to do when faced with such a difficult situation like that would be something like he suggested first, which was to go to the forest, kind of give everything up, and not fight. Krishna told him, "No, you have to fight. You should stay in your position, do your duty, but do it with love for me." So in the same way, this Kurma Brahmana at first had a similar desire in that he wanted to give everything up and travel with Lord Chaitanya and let that be that. But Lord Chaitanya, who is, of course, is Krishna himself, responded in kind. And he said, "No, actually you should stay with your family." And I gave him a very important instruction as well. So we'll get into that right now. The Brahmana begged Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, "My dear Lord, kindly show me favor and let me go with you. I can no longer tolerate the waves of misery caused by materialistic life." Sounds like Arjuna a little bit, right? Instruct everyone. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu replied, "Don't speak like that again. Better to remain at home and chant the holy name of Krishna always. Instruct everyone to follow the orders of Lord Sri Krishna as they are given in the Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam. In this way, become a spiritual master and try to liberate everyone in this land." Let's check this one out. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu further advised the Brahmana Kurma, "If you follow this instruction, your materialistic life at home will not obstruct your spiritual advancement. Indeed, if you follow these regulative principles, we will again meet here, or rather, you will never lose my company." At whosever house Sri Chaitanya accepted his alms by taking prasadam, he would convert the dwellers to his Sankirtan movement and advise them just as he advised the Brahmana named Kurma. So it wasn't just Kurma. We can't say that, oh, well, this is a specific person, a specific instruction, time and place, this person. It said just there, at whoever's house he resided at while there in South India, he would give them the same instruction, just to tell everybody about Krishna. And he said, by so doing, then you'll never lose my company. Very powerful. If we go down to 135, when Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu left, the Brahmana Kurma followed him a great distance, but eventually Lord Chaitanya took care to send him back home. There was also a Brahmana named Vasudev, who was a great person, but was suffering from leprosy. Indeed, his body was filled with living worms. Although suffering from leprosy, the Brahmana Vasudev was enlightened. As soon as one worm fell from his body, he would pick it up and place it back again in the same location. Then one night, Vasudev heard of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's arrival, and in the morning he came to see the Lord at the house of Kurma. When the leper Vasudev came to Kurma's house to see Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he was informed that the Lord had already left. The leper then fell to the ground unconscious. When Vasudev, the leper Brahmana, was lamenting due to not being able to see Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the Lord immediately returned to that spot and embraced him. When Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu touched him, both the leprosy and his distress went to a distant place. Indeed, Vasudev's body became very beautiful, to his great happiness. The Brahmana Vasudev was astonished to behold the wonderful mercy of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And he began to recite a verse from Srimad Bhagavatam, touching the Lord's lotus feet. He said, "Who am I, a sinful poor friend of a Brahmana? And who is Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, full in 6 opulences? Nonetheless, he has embraced me with his 2 arms." The Brahmana Vasudev continued, "O my merciful Lord, such mercy is not possible for ordinary living entities. Such mercy can be found only in you. Upon seeing me, even a sinful person goes away due to my bad bodily odor. Yet you have touched me. Such is the independent behavior of the Supreme Personality of Godhead." Being meek and humble, the Brahmana Vasudev worried that he would become proud after being cured by the grace of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. To protect the Brahmana, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu advised him to chant the Hare Krishna mantra incessantly. By so doing, he would never become unnecessarily proud. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu also advised Vasudev to preach about Krishna and thus liberate living entities. As a result, Krishna would very soon accept him as his devotee. So there we have it. It's very clearly laid out exactly what Lord Chaitanya advised in terms of how to develop Braj Prem, which is very interesting. He didn't say that we should go to the forest and read esoteric literatures or should just sit in a hut, and chant all day, especially as householders. He's advising specifically that we should give this message of Krishna to others. And by so doing, he said something very beautiful, which was that you'll never be separated from me, which is really nice. And I started thinking about that. What does that actually mean? Because there's so many different ways you could interpret something like that. But of course, we go to Shastra to see what that could possibly mean. And one of the verses that came up immediately for me was the 17th verse of the 2nd chapter of the 1st canto, Shrinvatam Swakata Krishna Punyashravana Kirtana Hridantakstoha Bhadrani Vitunoti Suhritsitam, where Krishna says something similarly personal, or Shukadeva Goswami says about Krishna, that Krishna personally cleanses the desire for material enjoyment from the heart of one who has developed the urge to hear his messages. So what does it mean when Lord Chaitanya says, "I never leave you"? If you do like this, he's, in my eyes, from what I could see from Shastra, saying that he's personally there with you to cleanse your heart and ultimately to reveal this love that's there in the heart of the living entity. It's worth noting that it's not something to be gained from another place. In the Madhya Lila, chapter 22, text 107, it's described that love for Krishna is eternally established within the heart of the living entity. It's just a matter of reawakening that love It's a matter of polishing the heart and letting that love shine through that's naturally there. And so how does that actually occur? Lord Chaitanya, because he came in the age of Kali, is breaking it down in a very simple way, basically by saying, if you preach and chant Hare Krishna, but specifically if you preach, he's saying, then you'll be taken care of. He told them also to chant Hare Krishna, but the emphasis in these sections was actually on preaching, on sharing the message of others. And it makes a lot of sense if you think about it, because maybe we've had the experience, I'm sure that we've heard of others and seen it over time, that even if we are chanting steadily, sincerely, perhaps doing a little service here and there, from time to time we may lose a taste for chanting and hearing. And so then what happens at that point? Then we see people maybe fall away from the practice, and then the process can be slowed up. Of course, it never completely stops or goes backwards, but it could slow up for some time. So that's where preaching comes in, because right next to that verse, number 17, it says, Shu Shu Shosha Danasya Vasudeva Kataruchi Sanmahat Sevya Vipra Punyatirtha Nishevana. That by serving those great souls who are completely free from all vice, great service is done. By that service, one gains an affinity for hearing and chanting. So if there's ever a moment in which we feel perhaps we're losing our taste for chanting, then if we do service for the great souls, then it's described that we'll regain that taste. And what does it mean to do service? It means to follow the instructions. It means to do what they say. There's an old adage that if your spiritual master asks you for water and you bring him milk, that's not really service, right? Because he asked for water. You might think by your own idea that maybe milk would be better, but what it really means to serve is to carry out the instruction of the spiritual master. That's what he really wants you to do. That's what actually please him. And the supreme spiritual master, the one who came to show what it means to be a spiritual master and what it means to be a devotee, is of course Lord Chaitanya. And here are his instructions, made abundantly clear, that I want you to Yare Deka Tarikal Krishna Upadesh. You should become a spiritual master, tell everybody you meet about Krishna, and by so doing, then Lord Chaitanya is promising here, you'll never be separated from me. You'll develop this deep love for me, and by that love, then you'll be saved from the materialistic mire that we're seeing here. So it's a very beautiful process. It's so simple, you could miss it, but Lord Chaitanya lays it out very clearly. And if there's any doubt, Krishna also makes it very clear in the conclusion of the Bhagavad Gita, in which he says that no one is more dear to him than the one who shares this message. And Krishna consciousness is all about endearing ourselves to Krishna. It's not that we are, by our own weightlifting effort, meant to go into the forest and chant hundreds and hundreds of rounds or perform some Herculean task, but it's a matter of cultivating that intimacy with Krishna. And what better way is there to cultivate intimacy than to do something you know the other person genuinely likes and wants you to do? So Lord Chaitanya and Krishna made it very clear exactly what that was, what they really like, what they really want you to do. And I thought it was incredible, the fact that just 10 verses away from each other, we see here an incredible, definitive, I would say, answer to how can one develop that intimacy with Lord Chaitanya and with Lord Krishna. So the thing about preaching is it doesn't necessarily mean that we all need to shave our heads, go to an ashram somewhere, but we can all fly in the sky as high as we're able, as it says in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. That we don't necessarily all need to go out and set up a book table or set up a Harinam, something like that. If we have the spirit, if we have this mood of wanting to give Krishna to others, then Krishna will empower us. He'll give us ways and means in which we could do that. And there's so many ways we could do it. We could be creative. For a long time, as one devotee who's a Prabhupada disciple I'm relatively close with, and he was having me memorize all these different verses from Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, etc. And I was doing it for some months, and it was going great. And I thought, this is great, I love it, this is easy. And then he hit me with, you shouldn't just be learning the verses, you should be sharing them with others. And I said, well, what do you mean? Like, am I supposed to tell my college, professor about, Matra Sparshas Konteya or something? And he said, you should write it down and give it to somebody, at least one a day. And this was like radical for me. Of course I had been distributing books, but somehow the thought of like writing down a Bhagavad Gita verse and giving it to somebody who has no idea what it didn't ask for it, it was kind of radical. But Mani Manjari will tell you, there were many times where I would give it to somebody and they were like, thank you so much. Like, this is exactly what I needed to hear. Like, basically, like, you were sent, to give this to me. Like, stuff like that. It was crazy. I give it to a lot of gas station attendants and all kinds of people. And not one person said, I'm not into this, or like, this is weird, or, shut me down. There was always a sense of wonderment, actually, which makes a lot of sense. If you think about it, that people are wandering in the material world and completely enamored by this kind of mire, by this kind of dense, dark illusion. And then all of a sudden, this ray of light comes in. It's not you, it's not us, but the transcendental message of Krishna, which has come through thousands of years, suddenly appears in front of them. It's incredible. It's one thing to give somebody a book and to hopefully have them go home and read it, but when you give them a verse like that and they hear something powerful like Matra Sparshas, like happiness and distress come and go, like winter and summer, but you shouldn't be disturbed because you're the soul, because you're beyond all of that. People, it's transcendental wisdom. It's not an opinion. It's not that you're giving them something that is fallible. It's something that somehow or other connects deep to the heart. Because, of course, Krishna is there. And whenever there's something so true, so authentic, the heart, the super soul, recognize that. And people have transformative experiences. So something like that was something that I thought could never work. And yet it's so simple and so sublime. And it really did work for some time. Maybe I should start doing it again. But that's one way to do it, which is a whole lot of fun. And of course, there's always a sense of I would say, like causeless unwillingness. I've heard it put before. This sense of like a little dread. Like, I don't know, what's this person going to do? Are they going to take it? Are they not? Are they going to think I'm weird? Are they going to think I'm some religious fanatic? But I found that it's very similar to taking a cold shower. If anyone ever's dared to do such a thing. Or even like jumping into the pool, say, for example, jumping into a lake. That in the moment before you do it, then there's always this kind of resistance in this sense of like, oh, it's going to be cold. It's going to be, uncomfortable. But then once you actually jump in, once you get into the shower and you kind of let it hit you for some time, or you jump in the lake, then after a couple minutes you realize, oh, this is nice. I'm glad I did this. Right? And that's happiness in the mode of goodness. It's like poison apparently at first, but it's like nectar at the end. And if we want to make advancement in any field, in any discipline, it always requires some sacrifice, some discomfort. Otherwise, we would just be kind of sitting around on the couch, like couch potatoes, severely overweight and sickly. If we didn't want to do anything that was uncomfortable, we'd end up like the people in WALL-E. Anybody ever seen WALL-E? Disney movie? It's like this futuristic world in which people don't do anything anymore because they don't have to, because computers kind of take care of it. And so everybody's like kind of sitting in these like roller chairs and they have a screen in front of them. It's kind of dark, but also, has this lightness to it because it's a Disney thing. And, but we have to be careful in our spiritual lives that we don't become like that we don't let ourselves become fat and lazy. Otherwise, we'll feel stagnant. We'll be unable to get up. That's actually how WALL-E ends. The people are unable to get up out of the chair because they've been sitting down for so long. They're unable to get up to to save the world. But it's a long story. But it's very applicable to ourselves. I've noticed that in myself. I need to be on the edge. Otherwise, there's no taste, really. There's no way to sustain something as radical as Krishna consciousness, in which you are going completely against the grain of the material world, in which everybody is doing literally the opposite, practically, of what you're doing. The general push is towards self-enjoyment. What can I get out of life? And obviously all the different things that come from that. And we as devotees are going the exact opposite direction. We're thinking, how can I be completely selfless? And so there's a lot of pushback from that. And the only way in which we can fight that current is if we make ourselves strong. We need to get used to discomfort. We need to live in our stretch zone. And so this is what I found to be one of the best ways to do that, to stay strong, to stay inspired, to stay motivated, and to actually retain that taste and have an increase in taste for Krishna consciousness is to give it to others. And it's never as bad as it seems. It's always, they're going to sleep for now? Shishu, having lunch. Okay, so the curtains will stay somewhat open, right? Shri Shri Radha Muralidhar ki jai, Gaurachandra ki jai, Sringadev Bhagavan ki jai. So it's a whole lot of fun, Krishna consciousness, if you let it be fun. There's nothing really fun about just doing what's easy, if you haven't noticed. Anything that is worth doing, anything that gives some sense of satisfaction, of fulfillment, it always requires some push. And so by living on this edge, by pushing ourselves, we'll find complete satisfaction. We'll find we're close to Lord Chaitanya. We'll find that we're developing our intimacy with Krishna and with Lord Chaitanya. That's a very real thing. And ultimately, we're developing this Braj Prem that Lord Chaitanya came to give simply by giving Krishna consciousness to others. And so someone might say, well, I'm not so much of an extrovert. It's a little difficult for me. And there's two answers to that. One was I also don't consider myself much of an extrovert. I'm more of kind of I prefer to be more kind of to myself. I'd say in general, I'm kind of coming out of it over the years, but I would say there's all different ways in which we can get involved with the Sankirtan movement. One of the best ways for those who are less inclined to go out and speak to somebody in public is little free libraries. Everybody heard of those before? Yeah, they're all over the place, especially here in the city. These little boxes that people will set up on the street, and they have books in there that anybody can come and give or take from. And so if we make a list, say, of all the different little free libraries in our area, and we make an effort to make sure that they're always stocked with Bhagavad Gitas or any of the other books that are there from Srila Prabhupada, then we'll find we get a lot of inspiration from that. And it's a very real, very direct way that we could contribute to Lord Chaitanya's Sankirtan movement and try to carry out this instruction that he gave. Try to serve him in this way, to share Krishna consciousness with others. Another good way is through a book table. So as opposed to going out there and perhaps sitting at a kirtan or engaging in walking harinam or stopping people to try to distribute books, setting up a little book table with a sign that says these are meditation books, yoga meditation books. You'll see that there's a lot more people than you would expect that are actually interested in it. And they'll come up to you. You don't have to sell them or stop them in any way. They'll actually see the sign, come up to you, say hello, and they'll be interested in what you're giving. And it needn't be so difficult. We could find different ways, whether it's sticky notes, little free libraries, anything to give Krishna consciousness to others, even just by having a book on us at all times. We'll see that Krishna will send people to us to give that book to. And by making that effort, by having that in our heart, that intention, and Krishna will reveal ways in which we can serve him in that way, and thus very directly cultivate this very intimate love for Krishna. in regard to the principle of always carrying a book on us. I remember, I'll tell one quick story. There was one time where I was going to fly to El Paso for a Kirtan festival that was happening. It was kind of a preaching event as well. It was kind of like a mix between the two. But Mani Mandri was already there. I was going a little bit later on. So I was by myself, and that's always a big issue because she knows where everything is. I always forget everything is. I had to ask her for everything all the time. And so I was severely late to the flight, and I'm trying to get everything together. My mom was picking me up. She was going to take me there. And running around, I got this, I got that. Yep, got it. Get into the elevator. And as the elevator doors close, and it just starts going down, I realize, I forgot to grab a book. I don't have a book on me. And so then there's that internal dilemma of do I go down, then go back up? I'm already so late. And I just thought, and the mood was just such that I just felt like I just can't. But after as I made that decision, as the elevator's going down, I felt in my heart that like Krishna's gonna get me for this one. Like I just had this sense that like Krishna's not gonna let this one go. So big plane, get on there, massive plane. I think it was going to Dallas first, and then I was gonna get a connection to El Paso. And I sit down, and I believe it was a middle seat. And no, I'm sorry, it was on the window, towards the back. And this gentleman comes, sits down next to me, older American gentleman, kind of a white beard, looks like kind of a well-to-do guy, nice watch, and we sit next to each other. And normally you kind of don't talk so much to the guy next to you. Kind of just, okay, even though we're right next to each other, we're just going to kind of grit our teeth and get there. And but somehow or other, after maybe an hour of flying, then he decides to spark up a conversation with me. He asked me, where I'm from, where I'm going, what's in the works, where I'm landing. And so we started talking and kind of going back and forth. And I could see that he had a kind of philosophical inclination. So I asked him what he did. And it turned out that he was a professor at a university. And so now we're talking a bit more about philosophy. And I could tell that he's into, I would say, like alternative thinking. We would start talking more about the material world and how satisfaction doesn't necessarily come from the objects of the senses. And when he had asked me initially, I just told him I was going to some kind of music event. And then I revealed this is actually like a spiritual music, gathering. Spiritual music, he says. Yeah, I'm kind of into that, actually. I said, okay, that's cool. Like, what do you listen to, like, gospel or something like that? He said, no, what I really like is, I don't know what it's called, but it's like, I watch these videos of it, and it's like these people, and they're like all in a room, and they're kind of sitting down, and there's like this weird kind of like piano-like instrument that they're playing, and everybody's like call and response. And I'm like, are you talking about kirtan? He's like, yeah, I think that's it. And I show him, I pulled up like a picture of, the instrument. He's like, yeah, that's exactly. So now I realize that like, I'm finished, right? Like Krishna is now punishing me basically for choosing not necessarily punishing, but so he's into kirtan. So I figure, okay, anybody could be into kirtan though at the same time. And, especially nowadays, it's more common. And, he's probably into some like, I don't know, like Mayavadi kirtans, like some Shiva Shambho, something like that. And so then we start talking more about kirtan. He's like, yeah, there's this one particular artist I really like, and I don't know their name. She's got like this red curly hair, and something with like a body of water. I'm like, are you talking like a river? Johnny V. Harrison. He's like, yeah, that's it, like a river, Johnny V. Harrison. So now it's like all coming to head, the fact that Krishna arranged, mind you, this is a massive plane. Out of all the people in the airport, and especially in terms of Americans, maybe like one or two actually knew about kirtan, what to speak of on the plane, what to speak of the fact that this guy's sitting right next to me and just decided, so to speak, to have a conversation and start talking, which, most of the time you don't do. And we could have very well went that entire plane ride without saying anything to each other. We would have never known that that we're both that this guy next to me is into kirtan. We're both practically devotees. And then I'm talking like, how did you get into this stuff anyways? Like, well, in Dallas, there's this restaurant, and I went there, like 20 years ago. It had some kind of weird name, Kala something. Of course, there's Kala Chanjis. And I'm like, okay. And so like, you got inspired there or something? He's like, well, you know what it was? And mind you, he's recounting something from 20 years ago. He's saying, I was looking up at one of the paintings there one day, and I saw that Krishna offering some kind of food or, getting his hand licked by a cow. And the intimacy that was there in that relationship, the idea that one could have an intimate relationship with the divine, it stuck with me all these years. And I had this impression that never left me, and it inspired me to get into this stuff. And obviously I was completely floored. I remember looking out the window afterwards and listening to kirtan and just looking up at the stars and just feeling like, wow, like Krishna is real. And Krishna obviously arranged this meeting and most importantly showed me that I should always have a book on me. So he taught me the hard way there. And I didn't mention this, but the cherry on top of the whole interaction was, as we were talking, he's like, why don't you give me a list of all the books that you think I should read? And that was the point where I was like, okay, Krishna, now you're just rubbing it in. So my life, by Krishna's grace, is full of experiences like this, where impossible situations like that, where Krishna showed me that he's real, beyond any doubt. Ridiculous situations like that. You have to come for the next class if you want to hear any others. But there's a lot. And it's a beautiful thing. I don't know exactly where I heard it, but I read somewhere, maybe Johnny Ty or somebody, Jagannath Gopal knows, that prema is actually just a transformation of faith. That it starts with Shraddha, and then that faith deepens and deepens and deepens until it gets to prema. And in that regard, these experiences that I've had where Krishna has shown me beyond any doubt that he's real, they've all, for the most part, the most powerful ones, have been on book distribution, or related to, or being without a book, should have been on book distribution. And I think that's Krishna telling me that, and Lord Chaitanya making it apparent, that what his instruction was to those brahmanas, it holds true for me as well, as somebody who's not a mendicant. And if I continue on that line, continue with the intention and the desire to give Krishna consciousness to others, especially through books, then my faith will continue to grow until it reaches that stage of prema by their mercy. And so I'm so grateful to the previous acharyas and to our current acharyas, people like Vaisheshika Prabhu, Radhanath Swami, and so many others, who are shown by example that to develop love for Krishna requires outreach. Lord Chaitanya made that very clear. And we see the great souls, the acharyas, showing that by their example. So, in summary, and then I'd like to open it up, we can have a little discussion. Lord Chaitanya came to give Braj Prem. It's a very high thing. And in his avadut kind of mood, he decided that the only thing practically you need to do is chant Hare Krishna and give it to others. Give Hare Krishna to others. by so doing, we're performing service to Lord Chaitanya, to Srila Prabhupada, to all the great souls. And by that service, then we get Vasudeva Kata Ruchi. We get a taste for hearing and chanting. We're able to continue hearing and chanting in a very deep way. We could chant Sneha Samyukta Nam, a term that I heard Satchidananda Swami say recently, with affection for Krishna, with an actual ruchi, an actual intimacy, a love for Krishna that comes through this service of giving Krishna consciousness to others that Lord Chaitanya requested of us, Srila Prabhupada requested of us. And through that taste, we're able to go on chanting, to go on hearing about Krishna. And by that simple process, then beyond any doubt, our faith will thicken and develop into this prema that Lord Chaitanya came to give to one and all. So thank you very much. I'd like to hear from everybody, if possible. It's a small group, so I think we could get everybody in. If anybody would like to share, certainly would like to hear you.
I really appreciate how you opened up the class and said how, what Chaitanya said, that I'll be with you to give this. And I immediately thought of a few things. I thought how Prabhupada the same way. If you give my books, you cooperate amongst each other, I'll be with you. And
Yeah.
it's such an intimate thing. Same with the Dvaitacharya, CC, where
Yeah.
he prayed the compassion. He is Krishna himself, but through all the lilas you hear Krishna, his devotees wanting to share and give that reciprocation. Same with the relationship of Radha Krishna.
Yeah, that's a great point. And it's illustrated in one story that Vaisheshika Prabhu likes to share, where it's hard to imagine, but a lot of those devotees were only with Prabhupada for just a couple of years before he left. And Vaisheshika was one of them, came in the early 70s, Prabhupada left 77. And they were so blown away by the fact that he had died. They were so devastated. But Vaisheshika Prabhu recounts that he remembers when the day came, when the news broke that Prabhupada had actually left, then his friend Pragosh Prabhu said, today of all days, we need to go out on Sankirtan. And so they did. They went to the airport, and people had completely given their lives to Srila Prabhupada beyond what is easy to consider. People change their entire lives. I remember Keshav Bharati Maharaj saying he was there when Prabhupada left in Vrindavan, and he remembered looking down at himself in his saffron, in his hair, and he realized that the person who I had given my entire life to, who I changed my life, the person who I have become, is all due to this person who has now just left. And so now what? Basically, it was devastating. So Vaisheshika Prabhu was walking through the airport, kind of dazed and shell-shocked at this news. And he said that something interesting happened, which was that as soon as he got to his spot that he would go to regularly to distribute books from there in the airport, as soon as he stepped foot into that circle, he felt this overwhelming sense that Prabhupada would never actually leave him. That as long as he continued on with his service, then Prabhupada would always be very close by. And Prabhupada said the same thing about his spiritual master, that because he's carrying out his instruction, there's never a question of separation, actually. And it's no coincidence that that's exactly what Lord Chaitanya says here, that by carrying out this instruction, you'll never be separated from me. So it's something very real, something very legitimate there that's very directly perceivable. It's a great point. Yes, Jaini Thai Prabhu.
I have a question and also just to share one thing you were talking about, innovative ways and, kind of three things, because I'm really inspired by your class. I always love it when you speak. First thing is about those cards or handwritten things you were giving out, the little Bhagavad Gita verses.
They were on sticky notes, yeah.
You were giving it on sticky notes.
Yeah.
I missed that part. Yeah, somehow I was thinking it would be I think at one point there was something, some sort of Gita cards that came out, but somehow I was thinking it could be a great thing to just, because people love mystical stuff, some people just love to open the Gita and see what the Gita says to me today, kind of thing.
Yeah.
I mean, so, but it's like that was so inspiring that we could somehow create some cards. Literally, you can just like pick a card, any card,
Yeah.
and see what Krishna has to say to you today,
That's cool.
It was really beautiful. The other thing was a friend of mine, he was adamant against book distribution. Like, he's an introvert. He's like, nope, you're never going to get me to go out and talk to anybody about Krishna. But he was chanting. He was totally into it. And I was trying to figure out how he could be involved in book distribution. And so he was, at that time, this is quite a number of years ago, he was selling watches, quite expensive watches on eBay. And so I said, well, why don't you just put a book, whenever you set the watch, just put a book in with your watch. And just, anyway, just charge them a couple extra bucks. I mean, they're already paying like $300, $400, $500 for a book or something, or for a watch, so you may as well do that. And he said, oh, okay. Even that was like from a distance, he could feel it might somehow reflect on him, but he did it. And he said, I'll take 5 books, and he took like small books. I forget, I think at that time he was taking probably some like Perfect Questions, Perfect Answers, something like that, or Higher Taste. And he took 5, and he called me like halfway through the week and said, I need another 5. I only ever sell 5 watches a week, and this week I've sold 10.
Wow.
And he's like, I need more books. And he's like, can you give me 20 because I want to sell more watches? So he became really inspired. He wound up doing that for like a year or so while he was selling watches. And he had people writing back to him saying, I loved the watch, but I really appreciated that book,
Wow.
So it was just the whole thing. There's, like you said, so many creative ways. And my question was, you made a statement that I never really considered or thought about. You said that the Kurma Brahmana and Vasudeva Brahmana, that they're not eternally liberated souls. And it was like, oh, really? Are they? I mean, they're like in Lord Chaitanya's pastime. So I'm just wondering, how is that? Where is that? That, it's like Rupa Goswami is considered a manjari, but is it just because we don't know who the Kurma Brahman is and Vasudeva Dutt are in the spiritual world, or where did that kind of come from, or that understanding? Does that make sense?
Yeah, sure. This is, I think, different from Vasudeva Dutt. This is a different Vasudeva, I think. Yeah.
Vasudeva Dutt,
But-
Vasudeva Brahman.
Yeah, from my understanding, just from what I've seen in the scripture, there are certain people in the Leela who have been designated as so-and-so in the spiritual world, Manjari or Lalita or Vishaka, like that. But from what I understand, most of the people in Lord Chaitanya's Leela aren't necessarily eternal associates. But yeah, I'm not 100% sure, but as far as I've seen, I haven't seen any description of them being so and so in Goloka Vrindavan or Kurma. It's described. He stayed at a lot of people's houses there in South India, and so I'm not sure if everybody's a manjari or like that, maybe, but that's what my research showed. So,
Thank you. Perfect.
yes, there may be worth looking into. But yeah, it's interesting. I like the point as well that devotees often make mistakes, even if they're pure devotees. You see, like Junior Haridas, who's in one of Lord Chaitanya's personal associates, you could say, but he became bewildered by the Bhattaharis, I think the gypsies there, and went off with them, and Lord Chaitanya had to pull him back by the ear. So even those who are eternally liberated, you could say from time to time, will fall off course. But by having some kind of service that we do, especially a Sankirtan service, then your seva will save you, as they say. You'll have an identity that you can come back to. And the mercy that you'll get from that service will keep you close as well. What to speak of the taste that you derive from that service. So regardless of our spiritual status or stature, by having a service, especially Sankirtan, as something that we identify with and that we do regularly, then we'll be bound up in that mercy, it's described that this order of Lord Chaitanya is a manifestation of the internal potency of Krishna, by which we can come to see Krishna face to face. So important is that instruction. We may have so many ideas of what we should do, what we could do. A lot of those things are really good things, but we should also consider what Lord Chaitanya directly asked us to do. And if we do those things, then we'll be safe. Sure, we'll feel fortified, and we'll feel like we have a taste for hearing the Bhagavatam and chanting Hare Krishna. It's a lot of fun if you let it be. You got to jump in the water sometimes, cold shower. Anybody else?
Maybe you can tell another Sankirtan story.
Another story? Okay.
One in which it was tough to get through to the person. Like
Okay.
they were not at all ready, and yeah, maybe.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, there's some crazy ones there, but let's see. Do I tell this story? I don't think so. Maybe in private I could tell this one. It's really like that. But another one. I found that sometimes if you just let them speak, somebody like that, then you could have a whole paradigm shift. In the same way as Lord Chaitanya, when he was hearing from Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya all about Mayavadi philosophy and so on and so forth, he didn't argue with him. He let him do his thing, and then eventually Sarvabhauma became submissive because he could see Lord Chaitanya's character. And so there's many instances like that I've had where somebody will be espousing their own philosophy, something, or wanting more to argue than to actually, receive something. But in those instances, I found that just by showing a lack of hostility or a lack of competition, of wanting to prove myself over that person, then it works out. Then they become a bit more open and submissive. And in terms of actual stories, I could say there's one or two, but they're more, I think, for private sharing. I can tell you afterwards. But one thing I like to say to people who are like completely against it, or maybe somewhat interested, and then maybe they hear something about karma or reincarnation, and they become a little turned off, is something that's very true, which is that I'll tell them, if you take this book, the only thing you'll regret is that you didn't find it sooner, because it will completely change your life for the better. And I've found many times that statement will switch people off. It becomes less about this is another guy, I'm talking to, who's got a table, or stop me, who is trying to sell me something, or trying to influence me in some way. And it's more like, this is a moment in the timeline that is worth considering, some extra consideration. And because we're devotees and we've had experience, we could say something like that with a lot of conviction. And we'll see people will be changed by it. 12:30 is when the curtains open? Yeah. Any closing comments or questions?
We'd like to thank Anupama for coming, giving us his association. Wonderful class, reminding us of Lord Chaitanya in preparation for Gaura Purnima, and also encouraging us all to distribute books or reach out in whatever way we can to become a guru and share Krishna with others. Wonderful class. Thank you very much, Anupama. And thank you again to Mani Manjari Devi for coming and leading Kirtan. Very nice. So we're going to have the arti now. We ask everyone to please stand. We can put away the cushions. And after the arti and Kirtan, we will be partaking of some small vegan feast. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Anupama Prabhu ki jai.
Hare
Prabhupada ki jai. Unity founder Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur ki jai. Ram Singh Ho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srila Gaura Bhaktivinoda ki jai. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gaura Govinda Shama Kanya Radha Kanandi Griyorana ki jai. Shri Vrindavan Dham ki jai. Mayapur Navadvip Dham ki jai. Ganga Maya ki jai. Jamuna Maya ki jai. Tulsi Devi ki jai. Bhakti Devi ki jai. Shri Shri Radha Muralidhar ki jai. Lord Chandra Bhagavan ki jai. Harinam Sankirtan Yagya ki jai. Priyamradanga Chancellor Book Distribution Key. Johnny Dagom the President. Oh, glory to the assembly. Oh, glory to the assembly. Oh, glory to the assembly. All glories to the mystery of Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada.
Not danced so ecstatically since years.
Vibrant, youthful energy.
Yeah. Now, that is good. Namaste Narasimhaya.
Namaste Narasimhaya.
Namaste Narasimhaya.
Tago Permanente. Okay, Hare Krishna, everyone. So this concludes another wonderful Bhagavat Sravana program. So every week this happens, as most of you know. So we invite you back next week. Sri Gopal Prabhu will be speaking on the topic of Lord Chaitanya's instructions to Sanatana Goswami. And that will be next Sunday, which will be, I guess, February 28th. And then we have Monday. No, it's on the 3rd. Yeah, it is March 1st. So it's March 1st. And then 2 days later is Gaur Purnima. So we'll have full festival here. In the evening, starting with Harinam Sankirtan at 5:30. And then we'll go up till 6:30, and then we'll have Gaur Arti Kirtan. And we have a class on Gaur Purnima, and then some Abhishek, more Kirtan, and Prasadam. So Gaur Purnima Festival. Ki Jai! Jai! So we encourage everyone to please come for that. And I think, let's see, is that about it? Next week, Wednesday, Matchless Gifts every week is the Srila Prabhupada Meditations program, which is really nice to come together in that holy dham. And we either hear Prabhupada lecture or we read from Prabhupada's a book by one of Prabhupada's disciples about Prabhupada's life. We have guest speakers this week. We'll probably be continuing our reading from Bhagavat Prabhu's book, which has really been ecstatic about the early days also. So we invite everyone to come for that and our regular programs throughout the week. So I think that's about it. So we're now going to serve prasadam here in the back of the room. Of course, if anyone wants a set of Chaitanya Charitamritas, and if you don't want the whole set, you can't handle that. If you just want a small book, this is it. Everything's encompassed right in there. Teachings of Lord Chaitanya. It's a good synopsis, so you can let us know. And if you're watching online, then you can message in, and we'll happily arrange some books for you wherever you are in the world. So like that, we're going to serve the prasadam now in the back of the room. As always, it is free for everyone, but if you'd like, we have a new donation board out there. You can just tap it. We're not sure if the $20 one is working, so try that a couple of times. Let us know if it comes out. And, if it does, that's great. We're happy. And otherwise, I think that's it. Thank you very much. And thank you so much to Anupama for braving the weather. And great to me for coming and giving us your time. So we're very grateful to have him. Please come back every week. I know when we were first coming, you guys were here pretty regularly, so it'd be lovely to see you on Sundays if you can manage. And everyone else, hope to see you next week. And please be safe traveling today in the wild weather. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai.